when we experience anxiety or depression, it's not really a great feeling. I'm sure you have all experienced some form of that, whether it's really low mood for a period of time or anxiety about, oh my gosh, like we're here with Michaela for the first time and I'm here with you guys for the first time. It's like, I feel a little nervous in my stomach. The most important thing to know, though, is that there's nothing wrong with you if you have depression or anxiety. I find the medical system pathologizes mental health so much. And really, the only reason why we call it anxiety or depression is mainly to help clinicians and professionals understand how to treat you.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Today's gonna be a special one because we got a special guest here. But before anything else, my name is Kit,
and I'm Kim,
and we are Noi
Pikana. And together with us is our good friend, which is Frederick Manaloto.
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and my name is Fred. I'm, of course, the resident interviewer, as you all know, but I'm happy to be here. I'm pretty excited for this podcast, to be honest. So,
what are we gonna be talking about today? Why are you excited?
Well, this is actually a big topic because a lot of people think that, this is a very famous conversation, like very famous topic, especially with what's happening around the world. So much for that. Our topic for today is about mental health and anything that's related to mental health.
How the brain works.
Yes, how the brain works, what causes it, what's categorized as depression or anxiety. So with that being said...
Yeah, without further ado, please help us welcome our special guest for today, Michaela.
Woo!
I'm Michaela. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to be here with you all. I am such an advocate of mental health, so I couldn't be more passionate about this topic.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit biased too. But I'm just really fortunate to be able to share the word and provide viewers with more information. Maybe information they already knew, maybe information that they don't know yet. Again, I'm not an encyclopedia, but I am human who does specialize in the field of mental health. I guess for a little bit with what I do.
Yeah.
So I am a registered provisional psychologist in Lethbridge, Alberta. I am specialized as a certified synergetic play therapist. So believe it or not, I work with kiddos as young as 2 years old.
Oh.
So
wow.
We do a lot of play therapy because for kids, for them, they don't have the verbal capacity to share how they feel. So they use toys and art and music and movement as a way of expressing who they are because their brain's not fully actually developed yet until they're 25, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, so all of you guys.
So I just got my brain developed.
Exactly.
I'm only 24, so one more year.
But that is such an important fact. A lot of people treat kids like they are already adults, and that's not fair to the kids. So I could go on about kids and all that type of stuff. But aside from being a synergetic play therapist, I also am a Gottman's couple therapist. So that means that I work with couples to repair and strengthen any issues in their relationship, whether that's marital, whether that's they're just dating, whether they had a child and they're figuring out how to parent. There's so many different avenues in all these different areas. And absolutely, every culture has a different way of doing things. And so I'm super excited to share a lot of information today with all of you guys about what that might look like in the Filipino culture.
Wow, that's
Perfect.
That's a very, very substantial introduction. Thanks, Michaela.
Yeah.
I guess we could probably start by asking you, what is mental health?
Oh my goodness, where do you start? Well, I like to view mental health as a psychological capacity to be able to function as a human being. Even as an animal, actually. Like, believe it or not, animals have mental health. If you've noticed, even too, like dogs or cats, right? They can get really giddy or they can be really distant. But overall, the general capacity is mental health is a way to look at your psychological health, your cognitive health, and your emotional health. And all those three categories are super critical to your own physical well-being.
Why do you think people need to prioritize their mental health? How important is mental health?
Honestly, if I can be honest with you guys, ever since COVID, as I'm sure that's been a topic it's been talked about so much, and there's still so much research on how COVID has impacted the brain, actually. Just a fun fact, teenagers actually who have had COVID are actually more at risk for anxiety and depression, regardless of whatever culture you're from, because a lot of their development was affected for about 2 years. So if you think about it, every single year of your life is affected. And when there is a sudden change or a traumatic event that's happened, your brain does change in terms of brain chemistry, right? We become more fearful, we become more withdrawn, we become more irritable, we use different things to cope than maybe what we did in the past. But all in all, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Because if you don't have what's up here, it all affects everything down below.
Right.
And that's how you're more prone to autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, cancer, heart attacks. If we can't take care of what's up here, how can we take care of what's down here? Because everything is from a top-down process.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think, as we notice as well, I mean, personally, I've known a lot of people that are suffering from high stress environment, high stress lifestyle. Most of them actually get cancer. Like at a very young age. I just literally heard from a friend of mine that a friend of hers actually passed away at the age of 35 because she developed cancer, and there's no genetic history of cancer.
Totally.
So-
And often I like to reiterate too, just because you're stressed doesn't mean you're going to get cancer, right? But that's a great example that, we all have different cells in our bodies, right? And it's really about when those cells divide. And stress is inflammation to the body. There's something called cortisol, which is the stress hormone, that we all have. Some have it more than others, some don't. But all in all, cortisol is actually toxic to the body, right? There's healthy stress, right? Like maybe getting excited if you're getting married or you're going on a
I
first
see.
date.
Yeah, or
that
working
kind of-
out, kind of physical
Totally.
stress. Yeah.
But the unhealthy stress is when we become so preoccupied with it that it starts to really impact our daily functioning, where we start to withdraw, where we panic more than, if we're waking up in the morning, we're like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, even though there's nothing really stressful that's going on in the day. And so over time, our brain can get confused. When do I need to be stressed? And when do I not need to be stressed? Because we're always on high alert to make sure that at the end of the day, we just want to be okay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
So basically, it's a factor to like a negative factor.
Absolutely. I always like to think of the negative and the positive. I kind of like to think of it as a pen. So on the tip of the pen, that could be the positive stuff about stress.
Okay.
And then on the back of the pen, the stuff that you click.
Yeah.
That can be the negative part of stress. But what's in the middle is the gratitude and the idea of what can I do to help when I'm feeling really, really stressed? What are the things that I can imagine or think about when I am feeling so stressed in the moment to cope and to relax and connect to myself? Because really, stress is just sometimes an underlying motivator to get us to do things, right? To start a business, to be successful, to, it's healthy, but it becomes so unhealthy when it starts to actually damage our body inside. And I like to view it as a psychological injury. We can't always see what's up here. But if we had a broken arm, absolutely we would notice when it's broken because there's something visible to see.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And-
why it's so dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous if we don't take care of it.
Wow, that was some good information.
You guys stress me out already. we're just halfway the conversation.
No pun intended.
You guys are,
No pun intended. Yeah. I guess another question that I would like to ask, since, like you said, there's a lot of teenagers that suffered post-COVID. How, coming from your like professional perspective, how would you differentiate depression from anxiety? Now, the reason being is because I know there's a lot of people that think I'm depressed or I'm anxious because personally, I don't even have a clear understanding of the difference between the two. So it's really, I think, this is a good opportunity for you to clarify to us and to our listeners and watchers what's the main difference between the two.
Absolutely. That's a really great question because anxiety and depression are the most common mental health conditions of the human experience. And I kind of just want to reiterate a little bit about that. I really like that question. And why I like that is that sometimes in any type of culture, when we experience anxiety or depression, it's not really a great feeling. I'm sure you have all experienced some form of that, whether it's really low mood for a period of time or anxiety about, oh my gosh, like we're here with Michaela for the first time and I'm here with you guys for the first time. It's like, I feel a little nervous in my stomach. The most important thing to know, though, is that there's nothing wrong with you if you have depression or anxiety. I find the medical system pathologizes mental health so much. And really, the only reason why we call it anxiety or depression is mainly to help clinicians and professionals understand how to treat you, right? If I had a client sitting here, like you right now, I would be thinking of a lot of different things. I would be actually asking about family history. I'd be asking about childhood. I'd be asking about social relationships. What's your schooling or employment status? What medications are you on? How's your health? All these factors create your story. At the end of the day, we're treating the story, not the mental health disorder, because that's what pushes people away. And so when I think about anxiety, I think about high stress. I think about heart racing. I think about dizziness, nausea, sweating, feeling really uncomfortable in your own skin, right? And there has to be such a criteria for you to meet the need of an anxiety disorder. Now, there's a lot of different components of anxiety. You can have social anxiety, right? Being nervous to be around other people. You can also have agoraphobia, so being in open spaces, it's really uncomfortable. You need to know where the quickest exit is. You can also have illness anxiety disorder, so being scared to get sick, right? All these things are caused by something that's happened in your experience. It's not something that you're just born with, even though there is a 50% genetic component with anxiety and depression, right? If one of your parents has that and is actually diagnosed with that, your offspring does have a 50% chance of inheriting that. But regardless, so what?
Yeah.
We still have to deal with it. We still have to work with it, right? And a lot of people struggle knowing the difference between anxiety and depression. And I like to think of them as best friends. When you have depression, you likely have anxiety, and vice versa. You can't just have one. You have both. It might not be to the same degree as the other, but you still have both. And a lot of times of teenagers that like I work with too is a lot of school issues, a lot of peer issues with people. The stress of what am I going to do in the future, right? Feeling like I can't do this anymore. Life is too hard. I just want to kill myself.
Right.
And I mean, maybe disclaimer, sorry. No. There is going to be words that are going to be used.
Yes, of course.
And that's just the reality of life. Yes. I find people sugarcoat it so much that it's like, oh, you have depression, like don't talk about it, just kind of put it behind the rug. And it's like, why? We know everyone has something. So why are we so conscientious of admitting it or thinking it's a bad thing?
Because maybe if they admit, people might think that they're weak. Maybe that's the case. One of the case.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most common things I hear. Well, I don't want my family to think of me. There's so much shame in admitting something that there's wrong, that there's something wrong with me.
Exactly.
And of course we don't want to say, oh yeah, I got this, I got that, right? We're not here to flaunt what we have. But with anxiety and depression, we're so anxious about sharing something that's bothering us, or we're in such a low mood that we don't want anyone to know because we don't want them to be worried about us. And so when it manifests into depression, right? Like you have to have at least 2 weeks of a really low mood for a period of time where, it's hard to get out of bed. You feel hopeless. You don't feel worthy. The daily activities that you used to do are not really interesting to you anymore.
Feel like empty, basically.
You feel
Emptiness.
empty. You feel hollow.
You feel like there's no reason for you to move forward
Keep
in
going
life.
on.
Yeah, keep going.
Absolutely. Everything's just done because your brain chemistry is different. Your brain changes when you're depressed and anxious. You don't have as much neurotransmitters as you need for depression, right? Like the dopamine hormone, or neurotransmitter, I should say, is the one that's the feel-good hormone. We don't have enough of that when we're depressed.
It eats you from the inside.
It eats you from the inside. So how are you supposed to get better if you don't have enough of the feel-good hormone and you don't really want to do anything? You're stuck.
So the question is, if I have anxiety or depression, how can I cure it or overcome it? Like, do I need to talk to an expert or to a doctor? Do I need to take medicine? Like, how do you overcome it?
Absolutely. Well, there's so many different areas, right? A lot of people have this pride that, you know what, especially males, right? And I know I'm like, oh gosh, I'm with a bunch of males right now. I better watch what I say.
Let's go.
But males are least likely to get help. Like they're not as willing to reach out because there is a lot of pride and there is sometimes a bit of an ego. And I'm not putting you guys down or anything.
For sure.
But think traditionally, right? Like males were these like.
That hurts my feelings.
I know. I'm so sorry. But males are these strong creatures of habit where they're always viewed as the breadwinner. Tough it out type of thing, right?
The foundation of the family. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so for males, it's harder to reach out. So that's why actually a lot of males suffer from mental health because they don't want to admit that. Now, nonetheless, females as well sometimes struggle with that issue, right? So there's lots of different things. I think the really important piece is acknowledging what is bothering you. What are you noticing in your body? What thoughts are you having in your brain that maybe you're having too much of, right? The more negative thoughts we have, the more we're likely going to get.
Is it like you feed on it?
Absolutely, you can totally feed on it, right? Especially with social media, right? And I know I'm kind of going in the weeds of different directions about this question, Kim, but I think overall, understand what is bothering me in this situation that I can't figure out by myself. And there's reasons why there's professionals like myself and other people that help, that we can do this. We can help you. We can work together. That's why there's doctors. We can't figure out physical illnesses by ourselves, right? But there's such a difference when it becomes something with the brain. And the issue is when people say it's mental health. Like there's something mentally wrong with you. That's so condescending. That's so ick. Like I wouldn't, like to me it feels like, oh my gosh, like I'm a psychotic person or something like that. I think of it as brain health. When you think of mental health, think of brain health. What are you doing to make your brain better?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people also have this misconception of like, if you've been prescribed with some kind of medication for it, it already comes with a stigma of like, oh no, he or she is going crazy. That's why he's taking this kind of medications. Where that person actually just wants to have it fixed instead of it blowing up on their faces, right? Because, I mean, following up on Kim's question, a lot of people I think is on the verge of like, I still got this. And then up until they reach that point where, oh my God, there's no hope for me. That's the only time they go to see a therapist. And so I guess it's really important to acknowledge that as early as, or as soon as you start feeling or start acknowledging that there's something's going on. I won't say there's something wrong, but if you feel like there's something's going on in your brain or by the way you think, the way you feel, if you could reach out to a specialist or someone that knows or someone that's a subject matter expert like Michaela, you have to, because it's really important, right?
Yes.
So
Sometimes people think that if there's something wrong with them, they think that only their partner or their parents can fix it, and
Yeah.
then they think that why would I open up to someone that I don't know,
Yeah, exactly.
to a stranger, right?
That's funny you say that, because that's one of the most common things I hear is, well, how can I open up to you when I don't even know you?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's totally fair. And I don't expect people to share their story in the first few sessions. How can you build trust when you have nothing to build on? Right? You need to build the foundation. It's like building blocks. You need to set that standard. You need to build trust. You need to build loyalty. You need to build like confidence. And if I don't have that from a client, I can't do my job.
Right.
So it takes time on an interpersonal level to connect with somebody, understanding their body language, understanding like eye contact, not judging them, right? And a lot of people don't want to be a burden to their family or friends. And absolutely, I guarantee you, most people seek advice from their friends or family. I mean, why wouldn't you, right?
Right.
Like if something's bothering you, you probably maybe just want to tell one of your closest friends. But sometimes your closest friend might not have all the answers to that, and then they might be preoccupied with their own stuff in their brain and in their life. And so I always say, you're not going to go to a foot doctor if you want to get your eyes checked.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? You want to go to the people that are specialized in working in those areas. And there's no shame in that, right? That's why there's jobs in this field of mental health, because people see such a need for advocacy, for connection, right? And in this midst of this world right now, right? I know we probably could all go on about how crazy it is and how many things have changed. At the end of the day, we as human beings and a species need connection. And if we don't get that, that can manifest into stress, that can manifest into loneliness. And over time, too much of that can actually impact the brain negatively, which can cause anxiety, which can cause depression, right? Which can cause like different components of mental health disorders.
So what you're saying is when you go to an expert like you, it's not just like one-time appointment. It has to be like a process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's expensive. It's sad. Mental health is so expensive, but yet it's so needed. And that's one of the frustrations that I have about mental health, is that there's such a barrier of the cost. But yeah, be prepared. You're important. Invest in yourself.
Yes.
You are worth it, even if you don't think you are. You are the most important person in your world right now. And people need you. You have all different gifts in this world. Yeah, sometimes people might feel like, well, if I'm not here anymore, no one's really going to care. Well, why does it have to get to that point to actually see if people will care or not?
And it's actually cool that Michaela said that, because especially given the day and age where technology is so accessible, like social media is everywhere, right? We have, I'm not going to mention names, but all the social media platforms, of course, everything has their own pros and cons. But
Absolutely.
I feel like people that are suffering from mental health issues would rather go to social media and voice themselves out instead of seeking professional help. Not to mention the cost. It's just because it's more accessible, right?
Absolutely. Like if you think about your daily activities, a large percentage of people are on their phones. Everything can be on your phone now. You can check your email on your phone. You can do so many different things. And I mean, I'm not afraid. I mean, I can admit all the social media platforms that I hear the most, and if you guys are okay with that, But like TikTok
Oh
is
yeah,
one.
for sure.
Yeah.
Of
Right?
course,
And
yes.
Instagram
Mhm.
or I call it Famousgram. Like it's people only want to share sometimes the really amazing things about their life.
The highlights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It
And
looks beautiful there, but in real life, it's
I'm gonna ask you guys this. Do you know why people only want to show sometimes the good stuff?
I guess it's because we tend to think about what other might think about us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just put this facade that I'm well off, I'm better than you, I have no issues on my own, so
or maybe that's where they feel good. Like instead of going in real life, that's where they run away.
Right.
it's an escape kind of.
It's an escape for them.
Absolutely. It's totally an escape. And one of the biggest reasons why people do that is to get a reaction.
Right.
You get an A+ from Michaela for
Let's
answering
go.
that. Let's go, boys, let's go.
They want that dopamine.
You're
Yeah.
excellent.
really
You
good.
totally nailed that.
Yeah.
They want the feel-good hormone. So
Yeah.
if you really want that bad, what are you going to do? You're going to go seek
Mhm.
it. You're
Yeah.
going to go do stuff to feel that. And I mean, by all means, I think that's great that you want to feel that.
Mhm.
But again, understanding what's the motive behind this,
Right. Yeah, that's really
right?
important.
Am I wanting people to have so many likes about my story or picture, or am I doing this because, you know what, I'm really proud of this accomplishment, or oh my gosh, I just got engaged, or whatever, right? Understanding, why am I doing this? What am I wanting to get out of sharing this with people?
Okay, I got a quick question about that. This regarding relationships.
Totally.
Like, is it true or not common? Like, couples that doesn't post a lot on their social media are much happier in their real life?
Oh yeah.
Not like a man.
There we go. Bam.
I mean, I'm just one person that you're asking this to, right? So, I mean, there's so many other professionals or other people that may have a different response, and I respect that, right?
Yes.
But from my experience and professional expertise, that's where actually a lot of fights come in. One person wants to put on a lot, and the other one's very private. And it's like, I don't need to showcase and have my life as an open book. And the other person's like, well, come on, like, it's fun, like, it's a way to connect with people,
Yes.
right? And people are having a misunderstanding of connection. Just
Yeah.
because you're posting so much stuff doesn't mean you're actually connecting.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think it also, we can connect that to being an introvert and extrovert. Like, there's a lot of, I know there's going to be a lot of talk about, or technical talk about introvert and extrovert, but from the word itself, like, people tend to be like, I'm at my peace when I do things on my own, compared to the other person where I want to go out there, I want to have fun, I want to socialize, right?
Network.
But they get the same level of gratitude, but again, do they get the same level of connection? So that is a very good, explanation, and the differences between posting a lot and this is me, why do you want to change me? Right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly, and I like that. And it's also looking at, too, their own, right, as a couple, both people are a collective, right? But at the end of the day, they're also individuals. So it's also looking at their storyline, too. Like, what's making you feel the need to want to share all this stuff? Is it because you want attention? Is it because you actually just genuinely want to share that with which there's nothing wrong
The
with
reason.
that.
Yeah.
But knowing there's a motive sometimes, or a drive behind why we do what we do. And I think that's really important to communicate that. And sometimes we can't communicate that by ourselves because it leads to an argument. And when it leads to an argument, then everything just fires up, and then more conflict arises, and then stuff in the past starts to come up, like it's all like the garbage from a few weeks ago.
it's like opening the chest.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
It complicates things.
It does. And then it's like, what is actually the problem? Because there's so many problems right now.
Yeah.
And that's where I say, hey, reach out. Talk to a professional about this. Communication is one of the biggest issues in relationships, and as well as finances and parenting.
Yeah.
So, and yet we breathe this every day,
Yeah.
right? Like, communication we do every day. Like, we're communicating, right? And
Right.
so if those things aren't in place in terms of, understanding a person's perspective, or, not shifting blame so much, these things can totally be rectified. It's just sometimes people don't know how to get there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't expect everyone to get there. I didn't know. I still sometimes struggle with communication, and I'm a therapist. Like, we're human at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Nobody's perfect.
Okay.
Wow. So, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Just another question.
Oh, I'm getting quizzed a lot.
Kid's on fire, bro. Alex, you better make sure this is on the camera, man.
Is there an instance or an experience like you're suffering from depression or anxiety, but you don't know it? Like you're unaware or in denial or something like that?
Or can you like diagnose yourself without going to a doctor or therapist or stuff like that?
Well, that's one I hear so much.
Yeah.
I think I have this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, how did you find that out?
Mr. Google.
Yeah.
Mr. Google says so.
Dr. Google told me that I have these
TikTok
symptoms.
says it.
TikTok says it.
Or, and this can get to, get really bad, and I just need help. And I say, whoa. At the end of the day, you want to just figure this out. I get that. And sometimes people aren't actually aware of what's going on in their life. And there's a few things with that, right? Sometimes people have a void. They don't want to confront something that they need to confront because it might be too painful. It might be too emotional. It might not be the right season of their life to explore that right now, right? Some people feel like this is a weird feeling, but you know what? Tough it out. Suck it up. Push on, continue on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the worst things to do actually is to self-diagnose. Because think about it, like how do you know what, constitutes anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what the criteria is for depression, right? You can look online, but at the end of the day, there's so many underlying nitty-gritty details that you don't actually know. And then that's why there's programs like, Masters of Counseling where they teach you this. And again, too, right, depending on your professional designation, like there might be an exam that you have to write that really wants you to know that all these criteria are not taken lightly. Like, I'm not saying, everyone can be a coach or a life coach or call them a therapist, but at the end of the day, do they have the qualifications for that? And that's super important. You wouldn't just go to a random person to diagnose you if you have a heart attack, or not a heart attack, I guess, but like diabetes or like osteoporosis.
Right.
Like going back to the bone or to the foot doctor versus...
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You want to seek the people that are specialized in that field. And even if you might not feel like that, there's something wrong with you, that doesn't mean that you can't reach out. I have a lot of clients actually that I work with where they don't have actually major stuff going on, but they really like having conversation and understanding maybe more of their viewpoints, or, it's just kind of a safe space and an outlet for people to talk about things that they maybe don't want to talk about with their parent or a friend or a partner. It's totally confidential.
Yeah.
And they like that because there's no bias, there's no judgment. And it's, like I said, it's a safe place where they know that they can be here and be themselves. And maybe that person that doesn't realize that they're struggling with some of these things, maybe they don't realize actually that they're not connected with themselves. And that's a beautiful way of saying, you know what, I kind of want to see what this is like.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying it on at a store, like trying a piece of clothing on. You don't have to like it, but you can just try it on and see how it feels. And that's how I like to view therapy. You don't have to love it the first few times. I don't expect people to.
Because the most common reaction that people get is if someone tells you that, hey, you might need to see a therapist, and then the reaction is like, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No one wants to admit that there's something bothering them. Like, I don't want to admit to people that sometimes I struggle with anxiety, or, I have just a high stress life. But at the end of the day, there's no weakness behind that. We're human. We all come from a certain place.
Yes.
And if we want to work together, let's do that.
Yeah.
Like, let's not be against each other or, you know, be competitive about, oh, like my life's so much better than yours or blah, blah, blah. Like, how's that making your life better?
Yeah. Which unfortunately is starting to be the case recently. Like nowadays, and you know, in our fast-paced life, like people tend to like, I have a better house, I have a better job, I have a better life than you.
Yeah,
that's
bigger
just
the
like,
better.
you know, like seriously, you know what I mean?
It's all about one-upping someone, right? And I call that actually destination addiction. And what that is it's this idea that what you have right now is not enough. So if you think about kind of like
That's really good.
like a leap pad, you know, kind of like a frog that goes one to a leap pad to the next. It's like that. It's frog jumping. So when you have maybe a new promotion at a job, it's like, oh yeah, like life's amazing, everything's great.
Yeah.
And then a month down the line, things start to kind of go sour. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to look for a new job. And so then you quit your job and then you go to a new one. And that's, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. And then 2 months later, it's, oh, I don't like this. Or, you know, you buy something that you really wanted. And then it, you know, wears and tears after a while. And you're like, oh, I want something else now.
Like shoes.
Like shoes.
I'm just kidding. Just making eyes.
Okay, is that you? No.
No, me. No, me. Just kidding.
But
There are a lot of viewers out there. Yeah, like, chuckling, oh God, they caught.
I know, they're like, la 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 la. Reach out. But regardless, you know, we have to be happy with what we have, and despite our own, you know, stuff that we have going on in our life, good and not great, we have to find some form of gratitude. And leap hopping from one place to another is actually not the reason why we can feel more happy. The grass is not greener on the other side. It's what's in here that makes things better. And that's why people sometimes think that's something, they go on a bigger trip. Oh, my life's going to be a lot better. Well, come back to reality, and reality hits. And then everything else just suffers. So it's really acknowledging that, you know what, if I'm seeing a pattern in my behavior that's not, like, that's becoming really consistent, or I'm always needing something, or needing approval, or, you know, reassurance, the only person you actually need at the end of the day is you. You can't be a partner if you don't take care of your own mental health.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, that's actually true. You know, like make you realize like how important individuality is.
Yeah.
It's
you know?
like, how can you take care of another person if you can't take care of yourself?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like that's how, like, I mean, a lot of people out there might bash me for this, but that's how math equations usually work, right? Like there's always variables. Like you can't have one variable stand alone, unless of course you can. But I mean, there's a lot of good like things that we've talked about so far. Kim and Kit would probably want to jump on the big questions that we have, like, for today. You know.
Yeah, good thing that you mentioned that, because since we talk about misconception, a little bit about misconception in Filipino culture, the most common misconception about mental health, anxiety, or depression, if someone opens up with their parents about what they feel, how they feel about this specific kind of stuff, the most common reaction that they get is, it's just in your head. Everything's just in your head. Or just pray and have faith in God. Because in Filipino culture, not all of us are religious, but most of us are like Catholics or Christians.
The Philippines in general is a heavy saturated Catholic community.
Whenever we have problems, we tend to like ask guidance from God, or ask like answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, religion acts as a buffer for mental health, right? And a lot of people who are religious, whatever that might look like in their life, have kind of grown up in this environment where, you know, if you pray, talk to God, speaking like I'm Catholic, right? I don't practice as much as maybe as a Catholic should, and that's another piece that I want to talk about, is the shoulds that we have in our mental health. But you know, God has all the answers. Just pray, just be hopeful, just keep, you know, I'll pray for you. And while that's all lovely and while that's so powerful, because prayer is powerful, I really do believe that in some form of whatever spirituality that, whatever viewers have in terms of, what they believe in, or if they don't believe in anything, I respect that. But the issue becomes about, sometimes we can't always have our questions answered. Right? Sometimes we could be waiting. Say you're in an abusive relationship and you keep praying that this person keeps stopping, but nothing's happening. Are you just going to stay in that relationship because you're trusting God? And again, I know there will be people that will be like, oh, I don't like what you said there, or whatever.
Yes, sure.
Right? But being mindful that, it's actually not in your head. Even though everything does start in the brain and the body, right? But like I said, religion is a buffer, but and that is a large predictor of reduced mental health. But there's also the fact that sometimes, being religious isn't always the key to combating mental health, right? And there's so much pride and there's so much shame if we do admit that there's something going on, right? Especially in the Filipino culture. Like depression is actually one of the third most common, Google said this, but disabilities in the culture. 1 in 10 Filipinos suffer from depression.
Wow, that's
and
so
only about, what was the statistic that I had read? But it was about 1 in 5 seek help.
1 in 10 and 1 in 1. Wow.
Yeah, like depending on the studies and whatnot, but there's a lot of there's so much research investigating about cultures and culture bias, and people from Asian communities, they rely a lot on their family and friends. That is so important. Family is so important, especially to get approval.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And when you don't get that approval, or if you say, I want to go talk to somebody, and they're like, no, you're fine, you don't need anybody for that, you need to push through it.
Yeah, and right there and then it just got suppressed, and again
Absolutely.
it just builds up compartment.
Absolutely. And it's not their fault that they're saying that, right? Parents or whatnot of Filipino culture, but they don't know any different because that's probably how they were raised, right? And then intergenerationally, that's kind of the cycle that continues on and on. But we can break that cycle, right? We need to be able to find, maybe it's a therapist who is Filipino, if that's something of interest, or maybe somebody who is religious that can understand, or someone, looking at their profiles and seeing, do I feel like I could connect with this person? Do I feel open about it? A lot of people choose their therapist based on the qualities that they have or what they advertise or share. And I think at the end of the day, it's so hard, and I struggle with that so much sometimes, working with these types of people, right? They're amazing people. They have so many good values, and I love that. But what gets them stuck is this disapproval from parents or friends, and then they're stuck, and then they don't want to, do wrong and whatnot, and it just becomes really challenging.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's true.
I bet you guys could speak on that. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think right now, just on that question alone, or just on this topic alone, I think a lot of people would say that, well, one of the challenges that we see is resources. And we know, and Michaela, you could speak to this, seeking professional help or, getting a therapist is not cheap, right?
Oh my gosh. No.
So, there's a lot of talks about we don't have the resources, we don't know where to go, blah, blah, blah. So as a professional right now, and speaking about the Filipino culture and misconceptions, what are some of the advices that you can give to people that are not, that are not being able to access those kinds of resources? What's the best place to start?
That's a really great question. Well, I would encourage not to use social media as a way to seek advice. There's a lot of therapists that share therapy on social media, right? Do this if you have this issue, or do that. And I think while that's all well and good and helpful, it also can become very obsessive. And so I don't want people to be stressed about reaching out or finding resources. There's so many different resources in every different community. I mean, in the community that we are in, Lethbridge, Alberta, there are slim resources. A lot of, if you have money, if you have insurance, you can get help. But if you don't have any of that, well, that really sucks, right?
Yes.
Because there's waiting lists of 6 months, with Alberta Health Services.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't think mental health can wait for that long. There's a reason why you reached out, so you probably want to get an ASAP, right? Looking into basic things of taking care of your health. What are you doing physically with your health, right? Looking at sleep. Are you getting proper sleep? I always ask actually that in the first session of my clients that I work with. What's your sleep like? Are you struggling with sleep? Is it hard to stay asleep? Are you having insomnia? What is that like? The other piece is looking at diet. There is so much research how food is impacting the brain and body. The more saturated fats, the more sugar, the more carbs we feed is actually going to make us, I'm like, to myself, I'm just like, and of course we want to eat and enjoy, foods that we crave and comfort food.
Yeah.
Why not, right? But sometimes we rely too much on food as a way of coping, when really there's so many other outlets, like exercise.
Right.
Exercise is actually just as effective as taking a prescribed antidepressant. Believe it or not. Because, I know, get buff, guys. But there's something called endorphins. This is a neurotransmitter that makes us also feel good. It gets that adrenaline going. You don't probably love, feeling like you're dying when you're doing a workout, but after an hour or so, you probably feel like, dang, that felt good. I want to do it again.
Yeah.
And it almost can be addicting,
Yeah.
right? So I always look at the things that are they don't cost anything. Sleep, physical activity, social connection. Are you connecting with people? And not by, having a drama session about, oh my gosh, this person did this to me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But actually, doing something together that could be physical, activity, or it could be like a book club, or it could be, playing a sport together, like golf or basketball, or joining a league.
Or hiking.
Or hiking, right? There's so many different clubs out there, especially on social media, Facebook, where you can connect with people.
And that's where the pros and cons of social media comes into play.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think that's where people get confused, is that social media is good for some things, but all in all, it's not really helpful for our mental health. So I always look at those basic things.
Yeah.
Simple things like meditation. Meditation is also just as effective as taking an antidepressant. And it's interesting, if we know these things now, I wonder if that will change people.
Right.
Right? I'm curious as to how many listeners right now are like, oh wow, I'm kind of reevaluating my sleep pattern. Maybe I shouldn't be going to bed at 3 a.m. every day. Or maybe I shouldn't be ordering McDonald's every other day.
Yeah.
Right? Trying new things, being creative, that uses your brain power so much. Listening to music, moving your body. All these things are so critical that will also benefit your physical health. It's a bonus.
Right. Yeah.
And your mental health.
Yeah. And it's also a process. You can't just do it and
overnight.
just in 1 week or in one month or whenever you feel it.
I
right?
wish,
Yes.
yeah. But no, this is a process, and what I mean by that is this is an investment, right? If you're investing something in the bank, right, you're not going to see money flow through. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
This is no different. It's like going to the gym and you want to get buff or train for a weight competition. You're not going to be able to do a 150 bench press right off the bat. You have to build your way up. You have to have tolerance and stamina. And that's when you can see the results.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think environment plays a big role about how we feel? Because Filipinos, in the Philippines, we never have this severe sadness in the Philippines. But once we get here, why is that we are suffering from anxiety or depression?
Absolutely. So I like to think of an example as, an environment that makes you feel really, really anxious. And if you're in it all the time, eventually you become immune to it. But once you're out of that, you start to realize, oh, that wasn't normal for me to feel that way all the time. Or, right, when you take yourself out of a place or a condition that's creating maybe anxiety, or maybe you don't even know that yet until you're out of it, right? Sometimes you don't really realize, oh my gosh, my partner was really controlling, but you might not have known that until you're out of it, right? And so that's where all these conditions start to come up when people immigrate, right, to Canada. There's a lot of Filipinos that are, still to this day immigrating to Canada. The Ukraine, right, refugees. There's so many different environmental factors, such as, like pollution also impacts mental health, believe it or not. Accessibility to things, right, like food, and more financial stability, more understanding about mental health, because in the Filipino culture, it's not really talked about like what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
That's the reason why we want to share this conversation to a lot of people.
And I think I will ask this right now. Speaking of like getting comfortable, and I think one of the major factors or one of the major reasons why mental health and depression is not talked about a lot is because of the old generation, the new generation gap.
Yeah.
Like our parents are like, we lived 50 years with no mental health, so you should be fine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, like, no offense to a lot of our friends or listeners out there. Some of you are really traditional. Some of them are like really culturally bound about the things and when it comes to mental health. And it's not just Filipino people. We can speak about other cultures as well. But what would be your advice to some people out there that are experiencing that kind of bind? Like, you know what? I love my family to death, but then at this point, like, I don't even know. Like, I feel this way, but then they tell me that you're going to be fine because we survived how many years of,
Totally. That's such a great question. Where do I even start?
Or maybe
with
just gap that new generation versus old generation belief when it comes to mental health and depression.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you think back, like, generations even of my grandparents too, right? Like, the trauma that they've experienced, right? Whether it was World War II or starvation camps in actually Slovenia. Like, my grandfather, he was wanting to immigrate to Canada. They fled, and then they were stuck in the starvation camp where, it was like a penalty to leave the country. And I think the biggest thing is to listen to what you need. We so listen to what other people think about us or what they want. And sometimes we seek things that we might not be ready to hear. You might ask, your parent or friend about something, and they might not tell you something that you want to hear, right? Like, no, just suck it up, right? But intergenerational trauma is such a thing in cultures, especially the Philippines too, right? Trauma is something people don't want to talk about. Let's move past it. And while I appreciate that it's not great to live in the past, it's also not great to acknowledge what you've gone through, right? So if the biggest thing is understanding that, my parents might not have had as much advocacy in mental health, or things might not have been talked about as much as it is now, right? You can create your own story. You can create what you want to do. It doesn't have to be based on the conditions of your parents. Love is unconditional. They will love you no matter what you do. It might not be exactly what they would have done, and that's fine, but what do you want to do? And that's where you really have to ask yourself the hard questions. Am I doing this for myself? Or am I doing this because, I'm worried about what people are going to think about me, or yada, 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 right? Choosing you is the best thing that you can do. Our parents will only be here for so long, right? And while they want to support us and love us, sometimes they show us love in different ways, and it doesn't always have to make sense. Kind of like sometimes if you need something, they're like, no, you don't need it, figure it out. Be the advocate that you want to be for you. If you had a friend that said, hey, I really need to talk to somebody, what do you think you would say to them? Suck it up? Right? Reaching out is the hardest thing to do, but once you do it, it's it's the best thing that you could have done for yourself.
Yeah, the most courageous thing that you can do is ask for help.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to put you guys on the spot and be like, so how many of you guys have reached out, right, and whatnot? And have you guys had any counseling experience or therapy experience? And again, it's not about, oh, I have or I haven't, but just being aware, like right now, thinking, I wonder if there has been a time in my life where I have felt so conflicted with wanting something, but also not wanting to disappoint my friends or family.
Yeah, that's really big. You know, like disappointing the family is kind of like a Filipino culture issue. You know, it's been an issue ever since. Like, I don't want to disappoint my mom and dad, my family. And that's what hinders most of us to venture out there and discover yourself more. Right?
Absolutely. Because think about it too. If you feel like you're disappointing your family, are you disappointing yourself that you didn't end up wanting to reach out? Because you have to live with yourself, right? And I would rather somebody live with themselves and made their own decisions based on what they needed, right? Our parents sometimes don't really realize what we actually need when we're grown adults, right? It's this we need to have this adult-to-adult relationship with our parents. Even though we are, you know, their baby or their child forever, we can't still be treated like that. We have to make those decisions for ourselves and be like, you know what, I understand your point of view, but this is actually what I need for myself. And sometimes you don't even have to actually share that with them, that you're seeking support, if that's really what you don't want to do. And that's okay, right? There's no secrets, but you want to respect your own privacy. And I think there are things in life where, you know, you do want to have things kept private.
Right.
And this could be one of those things, and there's no shame about that. There's so much shame that I did something wrong, or I'm weak, but my parents say I'm not. How conflicting would that feel like, right?
Yeah.
Like, how confusing. So acknowledging, maybe there's an opportunity for you to bring parents into the therapy session and have family counseling.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? Like, they don't have to, like I said about the clothing piece at a store, they don't have to like it, but they can try it.
Right.
And the worst thing that could happen is nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would maybe gain perspective or some insight, and maybe the therapist, like myself or whoever that would be, could learn more about themselves and learn more about their background, because that's absolutely a dynamic in relationships.
Wow, that's really cool.
Shout out to the parents out there.
And,
Exactly.
And just to add on what Michaela said, I think like it's not actually a matter of I love you less or I love you more as a parent. It's more of like, am I doing the right thing for my kid or for my son or daughter? Like, I've been trying to, you know, a lot of parents out there wants the best for their children. You know, there's no lie in that. But are you really? Like, did you even ask yourself if you're doing the best for your child? Have you checked on them at least once?
Absolutely.
Right?
And it's all about reframing things too, right? Like, if it's a parent-child dynamic, rather than the parent saying, no, you shouldn't do that, or yeah, you should do that, put the question in their hands and ask, what do you think you want to do? Rather than, you should do this or you shouldn't do that. Now that's based on conditions, right? You're going to give that person way more self-esteem. You're going to let them use their inner voice. You're going to let them express themselves in the way that they can. There's so much freedom to be able to speak how you want to speak. But you can't speak based on the terms of what other people, what want you to read or what you want to say. Let it come out naturally, right? And if somebody doesn't like the decision you make, that's okay. Does your love change for them? No. Is it hard to realize that? Yeah. But nothing will change in terms of how much somebody cares about you. And if they don't care about you as much, there's another opportunity to have a conversation about that through the guidance of a therapist. Someone that can help mediate conversations.
Like a bridge.
A bridge.
Yeah.
Bridge the gap. Absolutely.
Okay, Michaela, for the last question. Got a lot of questions. So, do you have a message for those people that are still skeptical about mental health, that are suffering? or in denial?
Yeah, what a great and applicable question. Because I guarantee you there's at least one person right now that's listening that's, I want to, but I'm not sure. What's this gonna look like? Right? I think the biggest thing is, what do you need for yourself that you're not getting? Are there things in your life that you are needing, an extra shoulder to lean on? Are you struggling because, there's some stuff that's happened in your past? And even though people have said, don't bring up the past is in the past. Is that something that you want to experience and explore, right? Don't make decisions based on what you think other people will say. Make a decision based on what you want, right? Because at the end of the day, like I've said, you only have you. You're the most important person in the room. And you're worth it. But if you're starting to be skeptical about things, that leads me to be curious, right? I'm curious as to why you're second guessing yourself. I'm curious as to, is there something that you're needing that you're not getting? Are you stuck? Are you feeling withdrawn? Are you actually just feeling fine and you're like, I kind of want to see what this is like? It's not about how bad you're feeling or how good you're feeling. It just is. And that's the piece of being mindful, right? I like to think of it as, our mind can be very full of all the chaos that's going on, or we could be mindful and have more space. That's what therapy is. It gives you a space to think clearly. It gives you a space to breathe. And we need to be able to breathe in this very chaotic, conflicted world, because it's going to sometimes get worse.
Right.
We don't know, right? Whether it's grief, you're dealing with somebody that's passed away, whether it's relational issues, whether it's trauma or PTSD, whatever concern that you have about yourself or somebody else is valid enough to bring up. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to do everything on your own.
Right.
I can't do anything on my own. I have a therapist, and I'm a therapist, just to normalize that.
Oh, wow.
I can't keep everything to myself.
So you have your own therapist?
I absolutely have my own
Yeah.
therapist.
Yeah.
It's like, your favorite barber has his own favorite barber.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to be taken care of too.
Yeah.
Right? And, right, like all of you guys, right, in different jobs, you're taking care of different things. And, in order to take care of certain jobs, you also have to be taken care of. So that you can continue to take care of other people.
Exactly.
And that's really what my message is that at the end of the day, you have everything you need that's inside of you. But push out the things that are not serving you well. The more negative things you think about, the more that's going to come to you. The more positive things that you think about, your life will start to change. And again, you don't need to have a therapist for everything if that's something that you choose to do. But you can have a therapist to explore you. Because, as I say with kids, they are the most important toy in my playroom. I don't need all these gadgets and fun blocks and all that stuff. I just need them. Because they're the ones that are helping me work with them. They are the story. I don't need to read a story. I need to learn their story.
Wow.
And that's how I work with individuals, couples, and families, no matter whatever religious or whatever cultural barrier that there is. That's my due diligence, to be able to work with that person no matter what crap that they've done or what they've gone through. We're human. Be human. Don't be a robot.
And
Speak
allow
up.
yourself to be vulnerable, I guess. Hey, like that's important.
So important. So hard. Oh, vulnerability is one of the hardest things to show and to feel. And sometimes you need guidance with that.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in feeling scared to be vulnerable. If anything, I would hope for anyone that ever wants to think about counseling or, whatever that is for them in their world, is to know that you're not weak. You're human. You need support. You need relationships. You need connection. And sometimes this is the best way to bridge that gap.
Right.
And then life can transform from there.
Thank you.
Wow.
Do you have any other more
It's
questions?
very inspiring.
I think I'm good.
Wow.
I
This is really an eye opener for all of us. And see, this is one of the main points of this podcast, or this episode actually, is to hear it from someone that's a subject matter expert. Right? I know there's a lot of experts out there, and we won't be able to please everyone and anyone. But the main point is for our listeners and watchers to realize, where are you at right now? At what state are you in your life right now?
Yeah.
You think you're well off, you think you're good, you're living the best life, but really, are you empty or are you satisfied with what you have? And I think Michaela, telling all these things made us realize how important mental health is, not just because it's a topic, but because it has been there since day one.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't really realize how important it is until there's conversation that's started.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Right? We can see that there's so many articles about mental health, and it's okay, yeah, whatever. But until you actually talk about it, even this conversation today, I'm thinking about my own childhood, and I'm thinking about my work and certain clients and all that type of stuff. And the conversation doesn't stop.
Right.
It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
This is a continuous timeline of events where you can choose how many times you want to go. If you only want to go once, go once. If you want to make it a commitment and a regular thing, do that. There's no wrong way of doing it. And that's really another message I want to come to share, is that there's no wrong way of doing this. There's no manual for this. But
important.
There is going to be work involved.
Yeah.
There is going to be reflection involved. And there is going to be a lot of success involved as well.
And there's no shame, for people, or especially for parents who are watching, there's no shame for you guys to ask or seek help from these people like Michaela or expert. There's no shame on doing that. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're doing the best you can. Just because you reach out doesn't mean that you failed.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you're not good enough. I think if anything, you're even a more successful parent for doing that. And that's only going to strengthen your parenting even more.
Yeah.
So that's something really to think about too, as parents who are listening, to really be mindful of that you didn't do anything wrong for your child to have anxiety, if that's the case, or depression. Life happens and things happen. And you know what? Things can be cleared. Things can be rectified. This isn't a prison in place where you did this wrong, you did that wrong. This is more of okay, I can see why that happened, and I can see why you're behaving like that.
Yeah.
Behavior is a human experience. Emotions are a human experience. And no one teaches really us how to deal with that stuff, except maybe parents. But school doesn't teach you really about that. But therapy does. And if that's something that we have to live with, I would rather people know about it and be, get better at it and be more comfortable about it, because that's a whole lifetime thing that we're going to be experiencing.
Wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, basically, do you want to promote or just where can we reach you? Do you have social media accounts or email?
Totally.
To invite our listeners.
And I always just want to reiterate too that I'm not the only person here that can help. There are so many other amazing people in the community and outside of the community that can provide services. I just lucked out kind of getting approached about doing this podcast, And so I wanted to take it. It's my very first podcast, actually.
Woo.
So, yikes! I hope I did okay. But yeah, in order like to reach me, there's different ways to reach. Obviously, I try and market myself through social media, believe it or not. But a lot of it is through word of mouth. But what they will do is they'll probably give you like a business card or to take a picture of it. But I am actually located in downtown Lethbridge. I'm actually right across from the old Paramount building, kind of where Canadian Western Bank is and CIBC downtown. I also have a business phone line. If you ever want to reach to schedule an appointment or a free consult, I do offer 15-minute free consults to see if we would be a good fit, because I don't want people to have to pay for something that they're not really sure about. So my phone number for that is 587-612-5134. I had to actually think about that. So it's the right number. And then I do have a website. It might be hard for people to know the spelling of my
Just
last
look
name.
on that camera over there.
But it's www.michaelapahulicounseling.ca, and there you will see plenty full of information about how I operate, the types of clients that I work with, types of issues that I work with, how much the cost is, insurance-wise. So no question is a stupid question. So always feel free to reach out. I do respond when I can. And I just look forward to whoever does reach out and does come through my door. And if no one does, that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
Like, life happens and there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
And if there's any questions, like, please, I'm human, ask. And I'm happy to respond to those as much as I can.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Michaela. And just to break the ice here, I just thought of this right now. You know, I'm gonna ask her some questions. This is what we call like a quick draw.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna say some words and
Sure.
just say whatever that comes right out of her.
Sure.
Okay, you ready?
No.
All right. Therapist,
Helper.
psychiatrist,
Medicine.
psychologist.
Counseling.
Okay. A glass half empty or glass half full?
Glass half full.
Night or day?
Day.
Cliff jumping or skydiving?
Neither. Cliff jumping.
Yeah.
Love or happiness?
Love.
Okay, that's all I want to ask.
Wow.
And I think that's so fun to actually ask that, because, you know, I didn't know if that was the right thing to say or not, and
Yeah.
I think that could be exactly how other people might feel in counseling, where, I don't know, should I say this? Should I not say that? Neither. It's okay to say that, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give you guys a shout out. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just very grateful that I had this experience to be able to share some. Like, this is, again, just a tidbit of information.
Yeah.
There's so much more information out there. You know, the internet is great for that, but there is also a lot of information that is false on the internet.
Yeah.
So please, if you are interested, reach out to any type of professional. And I hope you guys have learned something today too.
A lot,
I know
yeah.
I have learned a lot about you guys. You're a pleasure to be around, and fun and joking, and I just hope that people, specifically Filipinos, that they can know that, you know, there's nothing wrong, that they're, you know, just because they are from that culture doesn't mean that they have to do things differently. That the doors are wide open and you have possibilities that are endless. So I just wanted to say thank you guys, and take care of your brains and do something that brings you joy at least once a day. And if there isn't something that brings you joy, I really want you to take the time to discover what does give you that feel-good feeling.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michaela.
It's been a pleasure having you on our podcast. Our very first English podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we did good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna try and say some words, but in the other language, but I'm like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah. If you like this podcast, hopefully in the future, Michaela can accommodate us again in her office. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even if there's like a Q&A, like if you guys have questions or viewers have questions, you know, it's not therapy, but it'd be really interesting to kind of see what people share.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's also, an opportunity to, get a feel for what things are like too.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to be back.
Nice.
Oh, thank you. And I guess that wraps up this episode.
Yeah.
Again, thank you, Michaela. Round of applause for Michaela.
Oh,
And we would like to also shout out for a guy back there, Alex,
For the lead support.
for
Yeah.
helping us with our video setup and
Mr.
everything.
Alex
Alex, say
Okingo.
hi to the camera. Come on, man. Dude,
Don't be
they
shy.
can't see you. So again, thank you, Michaela, and Kit Kim. Thank you again for having me on your
Of course,
podcast.
yeah.
This is really a good episode, and I hope our listeners or your listeners and our viewers out there can take the time to really ask themselves where they're at right now. Because for
Absolutely.
me, that's a big question, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So Kim and Kit, take it away.
And again, my name is Kit.
And I'm Kim, and we are
Noi Picana.
Woo!
Wow.
Yeah.